My gate hung half-latched, a fresh scuff mark on the post where no shoe should have been. The porch light glared even though I'd left it off, pouring suspicion into the twilight. Max stiffened, growling low, as if he already knew we weren't alone. "Evening, Mr. Crane." Karen's voice carried from the porch. She stood square at the top of the steps, a red clipboard braced in one arm like a shield. The smile on her face looked pasted on. I dropped the grocery bag onto the hood of my truck. "Karen, you been checking my porch light?" She tilted her head. "Section 3.4 of the Covenants clearly states exterior fixtures must be maintained in working order. Your light was off last week. Safety hazard." Max huffed, circling behind me. I rested a hand on his back. "A strange thing, Karen. I left it off. Didn't know that was grounds for inspection." Her pen clicked. "We encourage compliance before it becomes a problem. Consider this a courtesy." From across the street, a curtain shifted. A neighbor's silhouette hovered, then disappeared. Another porch light blinked on like folks were checking to see what the fuss was. Karen adjusted her clipboard, its metal clip shining. "We'll also need you to repaint that trim by July. Faded paint reduces property values." I let out a slow breath. The trim was fine white enough to blind a man at noon. Appreciate the reminder. "Anything else on your evening route trash receptacle visible from the street? That's another violation." She glanced at her notes, lips pursed. "Trash pickups in the morning. Can't exactly levitate the can." Her smile sharpened. "Perhaps this community isn't a fit for everyone." For a second, I just listened to the cicadas in the trees. The clipboard looked untouched, its glossy surface catching the last light of day. She hadn't slammed it yet, hadn't scuffed it still whole like her authority. Max barked once, sharp enough to make Karen step back. I said quietly, more to myself than her, "Lady, you picked the wrong neighbor." The first one arrived on a Monday, a windowed envelope with certified mail stamped at a slant, the green slip stapled to the corner like a warning flag. I set it on the kitchen table beside my coffee and stared at my name typed in block caps. Crane Walter. As if the font itself had something against me. Max lay at my feet, chin on his paws, eyes flicking from the envelope to my face. I slid it open with a butter knife. Notice of violation. Trash receptacle. Visible from street. The photograph was a grainy print of my driveway at dawn. The can's lid was shut. So were my teeth. By Thursday, there were two more. One said my porch bulb wasn't the correct warm white per community standards. Another took issue with the small flag I'd clipped to the rail for Memorial Day, unapproved exterior decor, as if the holiday needed a permit. I stacked the letters, the green certified slips fluttering like fish gills. "Who keeps taking pictures at 6 a.m.? I asked Max. He thumped his tail once, which I took as agreement that the hour was indecent. I decided not to play the mailbox game alone. The HOA's monthly meeting fell on a Tuesday. I showed up at the clubhouse with the envelope stack tucked under my arm. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed a tired chord. Linoleum shone like a lake of old varnish. A metal coffee urn breathed burnt steam on a folding table, and a dozen neighbors sat in rows of plastic chairs, the room perfumed with winter coats and polite distrust. "Mr. Crane!" Karen's voice floated from the front. She was in the same red blazer, that clipboard bright enough to be a hazard. "Welcome. Evening," I said. She tapped her pen, twice a tiny gavel. "Before we proceed to landscaping, we'll address a series of compliance concerns regarding Lot 12. Her eyes settled on me like a hawk's shadow. "Mr. Crane's property." A low ripple went through the chairs. Jim, from 2 doors down, gave me a quick nod. Others looked away, suddenly fascinated by the stapled agenda. "State your name for the minutes." The secretary murmured, without looking up, "Walt Crane." "Thank you." Karen smiled. "We've received multiple complaints. The board has issued notices accordingly. Complaints from whom I asked." She turned a page. "It's standard practice to protect complainant privacy." "Convenient," I said. "Do they also come with early morning photography lessons?" A couple of neighbors coughed into their sleeves. The coffee urn hissed like it wanted to take my side. Karen's smile thinned. "Let's be clear. Section 2.1 prohibits trash receptacles visible from the street except on collection day. Yours was visible. Picture looks like dawn," I said. "Collection is at 7. I assume the board doesn't expect me to push the can by braille." A man in the third row, new-face baseball cap, snorted. The secretary shot him a look. "And the porch light," Karen said. "Warm white is specified for aesthetic uniformity." "I'll tell the sun to dim itself to HOA-compliant Kelvin," I said. Jim coughed again. It sounded a lot like a laugh he'd swallowed. Karen touched the clipboard's clip the way some folks find a cross. We also have a noise complaint. The German Shepherd. I felt Max in my mind the way you feel a tooth with your tongue. Max barks when someone walks up to his fence. That's called cause and effect. Large breeds can be intimidating, she said. Liability is the board's concern. Liability is everyone's concern, I said, which is why my gate is latched, my dog is trained, and my dues are paid. She ignored the last part. Do you dispute the notices I do, said. I laid my stack on the front table, green slips fluttering like tiny flags, and since we're talking about the record, I slid the top letter to her. I'd like the minutes to reflect I received these by certified mail. The secretary's pen scratched. A neighbor behind me whispered, certified. They're serious about him. Karen didn't look at the papers. We have rules for a reason, Mr. Crane. Good, I said. Reasons travel well on paper. Minnie Cliff hung a moment in the hum of lights and the shifting of coats. Then Karen pivoted, voice sweet as saccharin. Let's move efficiently. Is there a motion to impose a late fee for failure to cure the trash receptacle violation within 7 days? Motion said a board member I didn't know. Second came another voice. Point of order, I said, raising a hand. Karen blinked. Mr. Crane, public comment is after board business. Point of order, I repeated. I moved the can before sunrise on collection day. Your photo is pre-collection. Also, I request the identity of the photographer be preserved for any future context. The secretary glanced up surprised, then back down. Karen's smile returned dipped in frost. Duly noted. All in favor, hands went up in a forest of hesitation. A few stayed down. Jim's hand didn't move at all. The motion passed anyway. We'll send an invoice, Karen said. As for the flag, unapproved decor is subject to removal and a fine. It was up for one weekend, I said. Memorial Day, which requires prior approval. You want a form for gratitude? I asked. Her brows twitched. Don't be dramatic. Then don't make me rehearse for it. Another neighbor, older woman with careful hair, leaned toward her husband and whispered, He's not wrong about the trash. He stared straight ahead like the linoleum might save him. Karen flipped a page. And finally the animal disturbance. Multiple reports of barking. Name one, I said. Privacy, she said. I shrugged. Then please record my statement. Max is not a disturbance. He's trained. He alerts. And I'm not paying a fine for a dog doing what a fence asks him to do. The secretary's pen hesitated, then scribbled faster. Karen reached for the coffee, found it cold, and set the paper cup aside with a sigh. We're not here to debate feelings. We're here to maintain standards. When homeowners choose to disregard the covenants, the board must act. When boards choose to stretch them, I said, homeowners notice. Her gaze hardened. We have rules for a reason. Right. And I'll be reading them closely. A plastic chair creaked. Winter coats rasped. The fluorescent hum filled the seams between words. Outside, the wind pushed dry leaves against the clubhouse door like someone trying to get in without knocking. Karen wrapped the clipboard lightly. Moving on. The meeting slogged through shrubs and mailboxes, the familiar ritual of order and second in favor. I stayed seated, hands folded over the certified slips as if warming them. When it ended, people filed past me in two currents. Some nodded quick and guilty. Some kept their gaze fixed on the exit sign. Jim stopped thumb-hooked in his belt. You keeping copies? He asked under his breath. Every single one, I said. He nodded. Good. Karen lingered near the coffee urn, rearranging paper cups into a perfect pyramid. I had the sense she did it when she wanted to be looked at without having to meet anyone's eyes. Mr. Crane, she said as I passed. Compliance is easier when we cooperate. Cooperation is easier when the rules make sense, I said. She didn't answer. The clipboard's metal clip flashed as she turned away. At home, I laid the notices on my kitchen table in a neat fan trash can. Light bulb, flag barking green certified slips like veins running through them. I slid each into a manila folder and wrote Crane HOA 2018 on the tab. Max watched from the doorway, head tilted as if he wanted to know what game we were playing. Evidence, I told him. The word felt steady in my mouth. I eased the folder into a drawer, the wood closing with a quiet click that sounded a lot like a promise. The diner's neon sign buzzed above the glass like a tired insect. Inside, the air smelled of burnt coffee and fryer oil that had lived too long. I slid into a booth, my folder balanced on the seat beside me. Harris was already there, a binder thick with creased bylaws under his palm. He tapped the cover like it was a hymn book. Let paper speak, not tempers, he said. I managed a smile. Some folks prefer shouting. He chuckled, lines deepening around his eyes. Retired attorney, part-time surveyor, full-time skeptic, he'd lived on Pine Ridge before half the current board members finished high school. The waitress poured coffee without asking. Cream. Not tonight, Harris said. We're on business. She winked at me. Always business with him. Then she shuffled away, shoes squeaking against the linoleum. I opened the folder and slid a notice across the table. The green certified slip fluttered loose. First exhibit. Harris adjusted his glasses. Violation, trash receptacle. He read it aloud with mock solemnity. Punishable by eye roll, I grinned. They keep sending these. Porch light, flag, barking dog. All documented. Good. He pulled a pen from his shirt pocket and marked the top corner. Exhibit potential. I leaned back. Karen's got a system. Death by postage. She's not the first HOA chair to discover certified mail, Harris said. He flipped another notice. But you've kept the slips. That matters. I lowered my voice. Think I'm crazy to fight crazy number tired, yes. But listen. He pointed at his binder. Bylaws give the board certain teeth but not fangs. They can fine, they can threaten. They can't erase a deed. The waitress set down 2 plates of pie. On the house, she said, You boys look like you're suing somebody. Just studying scripture, Harris told her. She laughed and left us with cherry filling and flaky crust. He thumbed through the binder. Section 5.4, Reserve Funds. They require a vote for major expenditures. Did you see a vote? No, I said. Just notices, and a whisper that they're low on cash. Then there's a trail. He tapped again. Old plat maps, easements, developer rights. If the developer left conditions in the chain of title, the board's power may be weaker than they think. I frowned. Chain of title? Recorded deeds stacked like shingles. You follow them back, you find the original roof. I pictured Karen's clipboard against that roof flimsy compared to county records. Harris pulled out a printout of an email chain. Neighbor asked about dues increase, board replied with vague numbers. No reserve disbursement detail. That's sloppy. I studied the CC line. Karen's name gleamed in it. Evidence? I murmured. Exactly, Harris said. Exhibit B, perhaps. He flipped another page pointing at a bylaws clause highlighted in yellow. All assessments shall be levied in compliance with recorded covenants. Simple, but sharp. I let the words settle. Sharp enough to cut. But, Walt Harris said, lowering his voice, don't swing wild. Keep it lawful. No shouting at meetings, no grandstanding. Just let the paper talk. I met his eyes. What if the board refuses to listen, then we let the county listen. Records don't lie. The diner's neon flickered humming like a witness. I closed my folder pie untouched. She can fine you, Harris said softly, but she can't erase recorded deeds. That line stayed in the air like a gavel strike. I leaned close, whispering, If she wants war, I'll fight with paper. Max would have wagged his tail at that, but here it was just Harris nodding once solemn as the courthouse. The storm blew through before dawn, leaving the street rinsed and the cottonwoods dripping. When I stepped out with Max, a yellow Stop Work Unsafe Structure tag hung from my gate like a bruise. A second sheet flapped beneath it. Notice of intent to file. Lean its corners softened by rain. Max sniffed, sneezed, and looked up at me. Yeah, I said. They brought tape and courage. I peeled the tag free. The ink had bled, but the fields were legible address parcel number, a scribbled badge of whoever stuck it there. I took a photo. The gate latch rattled under my hand as if it had a voice of its own. By afternoon, I was at the clubhouse. The lot smelled of wet asphalt and old coffee. Inside, papers lay in staggered stacks where humidity had curled the edges. The fluorescent lights hummed in a damp minor key. Karen stood at the front. Her red blazer looked brighter against the gray day, the clipboard tucked under her arm like a prize. The clerk sat separated from the board by a thin plastic shield left over from the year the world tried to stop breathing. Mr. Crane. Karen said, not smiling. We'll be addressing your arrears today. Arrears, I echoed. Big word for a rainy afternoon. The clerk lifted a hand. Please state your name for the record. Walt Crane. Thank you. He glanced at the tag I'd brought. Is that for the record as well? I set the yellow placard on the table where everyone could see it. Exhibit S1, I said. The paper shivered in the air conditioning. Karen slid a sheet toward me with the affection of a snake. Notice of intent to file lien for non-payment of assessments. I skimmed it. Dates, amounts, a line that didn't add. This total includes a late fee for a trash can you find, then find again, I said. And the porch bulb you measured in degrees of warmth. I paid the assessments. You paid selectively, she said. Do you have receipts? Asked the clerk, careful as a man stepping on thin ice. I pulled a smaller folder from my coat. Certified mail slips, canceled checks. Copy for the record. He nodded and slid me a plastic sleeve. Please. Karen's pen tapped the clipboard. Tap, tap, a metronome for trouble. The board has also received reports regarding an unsafe condition. From whom I asked. Multiple sources, she said. Anonymous sources are eager in this town, I said. She ignored that, reaching into a folder and pulling out a reserve disbursement table. Columns, rows, negative numbers like bruises. As you can see, our reserves have been strained by necessary repairs. Compliance keeps costs predictable. Non-compliance, she looked up, doesn't. The clerk cleared his throat. For the minutes, the table shows gaps, I said, leaning in. You repainted the clubhouse twice in 18 months. That's not a catastrophe, that's a preference. A board member to Karen's right shifted in his chair. We voted. In open session, I asked. In board business, he said. The clerk's pen hesitated. Was that motion recorded? Karen's smile tightened. Let's stay on topic. Mr. Crane has unpaid amounts. Topic is fine, I said. Math is better. She set the clipboard down, palm flat. The metal clip caught the light. You've been warned repeatedly. The board will proceed. With what I asked. The yellow decoration on my gate demolition of non-compliant structures is authorized under Section 7.3, she said, voice carrying. We won't let one homeowner endanger property values. That section says, after due hearing and vote, I replied. 2 sentences. Even I can count to 2. A murmur went through the half-filled room. Coats rustled. Someone coughed behind a mask they'd forgotten to leave at home. Karen lifted the clipboard again and brought it down on the table. The sound cracked like a small branch. A hairline fracture spidered across the glossy back. Her face didn't change, but her fingers regripped as if the plastic had argued. The clerk flinched. Let the record reflect a chair emphasized a point. Let it reflect. She broke her prop, I said. Her eyes cut to me. The board has wide discretion. Not wide enough to straddle deeds, I said. Mr. Crane, she said, voice silk over wire, you're in arrears and in denial. We've received complaints about your dog, your lighting your flag, and my audacity to live in a house I own, I said. Where's the unsafe condition exactly? She pushed another photo my way, my porch from a low angle, the wood dark from the storm. A single nailhead shone like a star. Protruding fastener. Trip hazard. On my porch, I said. Visible from the street, she said. The clerk leaned forward. Do we have a city inspection tied to the stop work tag, or was this board-issued Karen's jaw worked? We notified the city of concerns. So the tag, I asked, tapping the yellow sheet. Posted by a volunteer during preliminary review, she said. Volunteer, I repeated. That's generous. The board member to her right shifted again. Maybe we should. Karen's pen snapped a line across her notes. We can't keep letting standards erode. If the board doesn't act, we're negligent. Negligence would be ignoring the record, I said. I slid a copy of my check image across to the clerk. Assessment for Q2 paid cleared. Dues are not in arrears. Fees based on anonymous Dawn photography are creative. The clerk looked at the image, then at me. For the minutes, a copy of payment confirmed. He wrote faster, ink scratching like rain. Karen turned the reserve table around so the rows faced the room. We repainted because prior colors were fading irregularly. We replaced the dock lights because warm white offended your weather app, I said. Her smile returned with edges. You're rude. I'm tired, I said. There's a difference. A mini silence settled the kind a room takes before it picks a side. In the window, I could see the lot shining with puddles clouds reopening to a brief light. Karen broke it. Enough. Motion to proceed with lien filing. Motion, the board member said too quick. Second, came another. The clerk adjusted his glasses. Point of order before a lien, the ledger must show arrears. We have a check on record. Karen's nails ticked the clipboard. The crack looked deeper now, a thin white line like a scar on enamel. Late fees remain, she said. Fees on top of fees, I said. That's not arrears, that's inflation. A neighbor near the back, older man in a Broncos cap, cleared his throat. Chair, maybe this is board business, she snapped. I kept my eyes on the yellow tag. If you want the city, get the city. If you want demolition, vote for it in daylight. But stop stapling courage to my gate. The clerk's pen paused, then moved again. For the minutes homeowner requests due hearing. Karen gathered the papers, the reserve table rustling like a bad curtain. The board will proceed with demolition, she said. The words were clean, practice-shaped for the room more than for me. The sentence landed like a dropped wrench. Chairs squeaked. Even the lights seemed to flicker. I reached across the table and picked up the clipboard she'd slammed. The plastic warmed under my palm. Up close, the fracture was a riverbed, thin and white and branching. I traced it with my thumb, felt the edge where pressure had made something give. "Careful," she said. "That's board property. So is the record," I said. I left the yellow tag and the check copy with the clerk, gathered the rest, and stepped into the wet evening. The air smelled like damp bark and old coffee riding my sleeve. Max would be waiting at the window, ears forward, reading the weather on my face. On the steps, rainwater tapped out a rhythm on the handrail. I tightened my grip on the cracked clipboard as if it could steady me. The rage that had sputtered all day settled into something heavier, denser, a metal I could hammer. "Okay," I told the empty lot. "Paper, then." The clerk cleared his throat and lifted a thin stack of paper. "Minutes from June 12th are entered." His voice echoed off the drop ceiling, the fluorescent buzz filling the rests between syllables. Across the table, Karen's mouth tilted into a smile that wasn't friendly. The clipboard in front of her bore the white hairline from last month's slam, a lightning scar trapped under gloss. Harris's diner line drifted back. "Let paper speak, not tempers." I slid a fresh manila folder onto the table and set my palms over it like it might try to run. "First order of business," Karen said, "delinquent accounts." She didn't look at me when she said it, which made looking at me the whole point. "Lot 12 remains in arrears. We will waive the usual demolition escrow, pending final action." The clerk blinked. For the minutes, escrow waived. "Temporarily," she said. I raised a hand. "Point of order." Karen's eyes cut to me. "Public comment follows board items." "Point of order," I repeated. The clerk turned a page slowly like he wanted time to thicken. "You can't waive what you haven't lawfully invoked." A board member to Karen's right leaned toward his mic. "We have authority under—" I slid a copy of the escrow demand letter across the table. "Dated before any recorded vote," I said. "Also before any inspection that wasn't a volunteer with tape." A neighbor coughed into his sleeve. The coffee on the back table smelled burnt enough to pass for tar. Karen tapped the cracked clipboard. "Tap, tap. We're not relitigating the porch. Mr. Crane's ledger shows amounts due." "Show it," I said. The clerk adjusted his glasses and held up a printout. "Ledger indicates." His voice softened. "Chair, there's a cleared Q2 check." He glanced at the photocopy I'd provided in Chapter 4 and then back to the ledger. "And a late fee on top of a late fee." "Those are standard," Karen said. "When homeowners resist compliance, costs accumulate." I laid down my green certified mail slips like cards at a kitchen table. "Costs accumulate faster when you mail the same violation 3 times. Chair, the board member to her right, said, "Perhaps we should." "Proceed," Karen said. Minnie Cliff hung for a beat, the room holding air like a sneeze about to happen. I opened the manila folder. "For the record," I said, keeping my tone flat. "I move that the lien be vacated and the ledger corrected to reflect cleared assessment payments and improper fees." Karen's head came up. "You can't move anything. You're not on the board. Members may move matters germane to their property during the agenda portion," I said. Section 4.2, last sentence. The clerk found the page finger-tracing lines. "It does allow member motions when the chair recognizes—" Chair. Karen's smile got brighter, which meant colder. "Motion is out of order." A neighbor in the second row whispered. He read it like I'd walked on water. I kept my hands visible. "Then I request recognition." Silence thin as film stretched. Karen finally nodded once the kind of nod a person gives a dog before saying heel. "Motion on the floor," the clerk said carefully. "Pen ready." "Is there a second?" The room ticked coat zippers, a chair leg scooting. Then Jim's voice from the back. "Second." Karen's pen stuttered. "Mr. Daniels," she said, "you're not on the board." "I'm a member," Jim said. "You recognized him." "Recognize me?" The board member to her right cleared his throat. "We can consider." Karen pushed her chair back an inch. "Objection. The motion is premised on manipulated records." I leaned toward the mic. "No. It's premised on your own draft minutes." I slid a stapled packet across. June 12th. No vote recorded for demolition escrow. No roll call. No business item listed. The clerk scanned brown pen, hovering. Minutes state discussion, but no motion, he said softly. "For the record." Karen's voice sharpened. He's cherry-picking drafts, then approve the final, I said. But you can't summon a vote that never happened. The neighbor with the baseball cap raised a hand halfway. Point of order. He sounded like he wasn't sure if the phrase had a license. Karen sighed. Fine. Point. Can we see the ledger and the check side by side? He asked. The clerk looked relieved at the math. Yes, he said, and set both on the projector. The ancient fan inside the box whirred to life and an oblong of numbers blinked onto the wall, shaky but legible. I stood just enough to point. Ledger shows an April 10th balance, then a May 5th late fee. Here's my bank's stamp for April 12th. You fined me for a payment you hadn't processed. Processing takes time, Karen said. So does the mail, I said. Yet certified letters seemed to sprint. A few neighbors snorted before remembering the social penalty for humor. Order, Karen said, tapping the clipboard again. The crack flashed when the ceiling light hit it. We're drifting. Harris's voice returned in my head. Stay with the paper, I breathed. I renew the motion to vacate the lien and correct the ledger. Objection, Karen said. He's manipulating the record. No, I said. And even I heard the steel. I didn't know I'd set in my throat. I'm defending it. Minnie Cliff turned again, silence, then shuffling, then the clerk writing faster. Chair, the board member said maybe we table until the town can review. Karen shot him a look you usually say for dogs who have found the ham. We have jurisdiction. Not over recorded deeds, I said quietly. Her glare slid back to me. Your sarcasm is noted. It's not sarcasm, I said. It's Larimer County Recorder Book and Page. But we can save that for City Hall. The clerk cleared his throat, sensing a way out. On the motion, vacate the lien and correct the ledger. All in favor of discussion. Move to table pending town hearing, the board member said quickly. Second said another grateful like he'd found a ladder. Objection, I said. Tabling without addressing the false arrears prolongs harm. Karen smiled the way a person smiles when a toothache has decided to move in. Your harm is noted. Noted on paper, I said. Good. She stared, perhaps thinking of slamming the clipboard again. She didn't. The crack on its back had made its argument. Vote on tabling, the clerk said into the mic. Hands rose, not all of them confident. The projector hummed like a patient with a thin pulse. All in favor 5, he counted. Opposed 2. The motion to vacate is tabled. The matter will be referred to the town hearing for jurisdictional clarity. A gasp traveled the rows, a small wave across plastic chairs. It wasn't the victory people expect in movies, but it wasn't the loss the board had practiced either. The projector fan wound down a wind-up toy out of breath. Karen gathered her papers, then paused and fixed me with the kind of look you give a jammed lock. He's manipulating the record, she said again, softer now to the board as much as to the room. I didn't sit back. No, I said, I'm defending it. The words landed with a quiet that felt heavier than a shout. The clerk clicked off the projector. For the minutes referred to town hearing. He looked at me, then away as if he'd brushed against a live wire and chosen not to say so. I collected my certified mail slips and the extra copies no one wanted to keep. As I slid the manila folder into my bag, the escrow demand letter peered out like a scolded tongue. I tucked it deeper. On my way out, the neighbor in the cap murmured, You know the book and page. I will, I said. Good, he said. Bring a big paperclip. Outside, the air smelled like wet chalk and warmed plastic. Across the parking lot, the town hall's brick glowed in the last of the sun. Max wasn't with me. Dogs didn't do well under fluorescent, but I could feel the steadiness he'd learned into me. The board had pushed the fight uphill. Fine. I'd trained for hills. Behind me, the door opened. I heard Karen's voice, quieter now, saying something to the board member about precedent. I didn't need the rest. I had what I came for, a route onto the record, and the record aimed toward a room that had microphones and a clerk who liked numbers. I pulled the strap of my bag higher on my shoulder. City Hall. I said to no one, which is to say to myself. And then, because Harris would approve, I added paper then. The gavel struck wood sharp enough to hush the scrape of chairs. State your name for the record, the hearing chair said. I leaned into the mic, throat dry but steady. Walt Crane. The sound system carried it across the high chamber, flattening any tremor I might have felt. Outside the tall glass doors, Max's collar jingled as Jim shifted the leash. The faint metallic chime reached me through the pane, reminding me that loyalty had a sound. The clerk adjusted his stack of papers. This matter concerns the notice of lien and demolition order issued by Pine Ridge HOA. The board alleges unsafe structure and unpaid assessments. Karen was already standing. the clipboard crack glinting like a scar perched on the table in front of her. She wore the same smile she'd used at the clubhouse fixed confident brittle. Chair, she began. The homeowner repeatedly ignored violations lighting trash pets and left unsafe conditions unattended. Fees accrued accordingly. The chair nodded. Mr. Crane. I opened the manila folder, the one Harris had coached me to keep precise. For the record, I said, sliding a stapled sheet forward. Recorder's book, 4127 pages, 118 through 126. Chain of deed from the original developer. Karen's head snapped toward me. The clerk took the copy, eyes flicking down columns of signatures and stamps. The city seal in faded red caught the light. Entered as Exhibit B, he said. Karen's voice tightened. This is irrelevant. Unsafe conditions remain. Harris, seated beside me, leaned toward his mic. Objection assumes facts not in evidence. Overruled, the chair said. Proceed. Karen pressed forward. The board issued a stop work tag after repeated complaints. By a volunteer, I said, voice firm. No city inspector signed it. The deed chain shows the HOA never retained authority to demolish structures without municipal process. Authority reverted to the city in 1998. The clerk confirmed. Recorder's notation. Easement rights limited to landscaping and signage. No demolition authority. The board member, who had seconded her before, stared down at his notes. Karen rapped the clipboard once, a hollow crack echoing. He's twisting technicalities. Harris lifted a different page. Bylaws, Section 5.4. No assessment shall be imposed without recorded vote of the membership. Minutes from June 12th show no such vote. The clerk turned the agenda. Exhibit C entered. Karen's tone rose. We acted in good faith. Jim, finally called, stepped to the mic. His Broncos cap was tucked under his arm. For the record, I live next door. I saw him pay, and I saw notices taped without delivery slips. That's not process, that's harassment. Karen spun. Irrelevant testimony. The chair raised a hand. Overruled. Relevance established. Minnie Cliff settled in the room, the crowd of neighbors whispering, shifting, a cough echoing under the vaulted ceiling. I tapped the deed copy once. This isn't about a nail on a porch. It's about authority you don't have. Karen's lips parted, then pressed shut again. The clerk's pen moved slow and careful. Finally, he read aloud. Findings. The Pine Ridge HOA Board exceeded its authority in issuing a lien and demolition threat. Payments were current. Lien is void. Demolition order rescinded. The chair nodded. So ordered. Applause burst before anyone could gavel it back. Not wild, not stadium loud, more like relief escaping lungs. Karen stayed standing. The clipboard trembled in her hand. The crack deepened by her grip. Pale now, she leaned toward me and whispered, too soft for the mic. This isn't over. I didn't answer. The record already had. The petition sheet rippled in the evening breeze, clipped to a borrowed board. Names stretched down the page, some neat, some hurried, each a quiet declaration. From the pavilion, BBQ smoke drifted with the low murmur of neighbors. The lake lapped at the stones, steady as a clock. Harris climbed the porch steps, carrying my old clipboard. The crack across its back was sealed hinge pinned anew. He held it out. Couldn't throw it away. Better mended than replaced. I turned it in my hands. You kept the scar. He nodded. A record of impact. Down the walk, neighbors leaned together, passing the petition. Laughter mixed with the scrape of chairs. Max lay by the rail, nose pointed at the grill, ears twitching with each new voice. How many so far? Harris asked. 68, I said. Might reach 80 before dark. He smiled faintly. Enough to matter. A couple approached the wife, clutching the page. She fined us for bikes, leaning against the garage. We paid, but... She pressed the pen down hard. Noted, Harris said. Each story anchors the audit. Audit, the husband asked. Independent review of the board's funds, Harris explained. Reserves, minutes, assessments. Arithmetic can be louder than speeches. I tapped the petition. Numbers don't blush. A teenager bounded up, hair still wet from the lake. Mom says, sign us too. He looped his name wide, then dashed back toward the pavilion. His pen stroke curled like a wave. The man in the Broncos cap added his line jaw tight. She ticketed my flag on Memorial Day. I remember, I said. He nodded once, like he'd mailed a grievance years late. Harris opened his satchel. Draft apology from the interim board, he said, sliding a sheet. We regret the misapplication of fines and the distress caused to members. The words carried toner and resolve. Will they sign? I asked. They will, Harris said. Even boards prefer daylight. The nurse from across the lane came next. Karen called my car too plain for the neighborhood. She laughed without humor and signed quickly. Patterns, Harris murmured, tucking her note under the apology. That's what policy should fix. The petition filled line by line until a hush came an empty beat between signatures. Then the porch boards shifted under sharper steps. Karen appeared, windbreaker snapping in the breeze. Her eyes scanned the crowd, then locked on the petition title, removal of board president, and the list of names beneath. You think this is community? She asked. Rumors and signatures. Minutes and signatures, Harris said. She climbed one-step gaze, snagging on my clipboard's hinge. Governance isn't a barbecue. Karen, I said evenly, we're inviting an audit. If records clear, they clear you. Her jaw twitched. And if they don't, then they teach us how to run better. She let out a short, hollow sound, then turned on her heel, stride cutting across the grass toward the lot. Neighbors exhaled together. Someone at the grill clanged tongs against the tray too hard. Harris looked at me. She saw her name. She saw all of ours, I said. He nodded once. Good. I slipped the apology draft into the repaired clipboard and snapped it shut. The hinge held firm. We're not done yet, I said softly, more to the porch than to the lake. Max thumped his tail once against the board's punctuation in the dusk. The lake held the sunset like a coin. Smoke from the grills drifted sweet and clean corn and hickory, a ribbon of butter in the air. Folding chairs faced the pavilion where a portable speaker clicked and the interim board lined up behind a wobbling lectern. Kids made slow circuits with paper plates. Someone tuned a guitar and stopped satisfied with silence. The interim president, Marla Eaton, tapped the mic. It squeaked, then behaved. Good evening, Pine Ridge, she said. This special meeting is called to order. Harris stood near me, hands in his pockets, eyes on the stack of papers in Marla's hands. Behind the last row, Karen sat with her arms crossed, the posture of someone saving face against gravity. A few heads turned, then settled forward again, choosing what to notice. Marla lifted the top sheet. Resolution R 2024-07, she read. A resolution directing an independent audit of reserve funds, correcting improper fees, and adopting policy reforms to ensure recorded votes, public minutes, and due process. A low, relieved murmur moved through the chairs. The smell of grilled corn rode the murmur bright as citrus. Section 1. Marla continued. The board commissions an independent auditor to review disbursements from January 2018 to June 2024, including repainting and lighting expenditures. Read the apology, someone called from the left. Marla nodded. Appendix A. She smoothed the paper. We regret the misapplication of fines and the distress caused to members by actions taken without proper authority. We commit to transparent minutes, recorded votes, and member access to financial records. Hands lifted not to object, but to wipe at eyes that stung from smoke or something like it. Section 2, she said. Voice steady. All late fees levied for duplicate or improperly noticed violations will be reversed. Payments wrongly classified as arrears will be corrected. Refunds will be issued. Harris exhaled just a notch. I felt my shoulders drop the half-inch I'd loaned to the last 2 years. Marla raised her gaze. Section 3. The board shall adopt a member motion rule allowing owners to move matters germane to their property during agenda portions when recognized by the chair. She smiled at me without naming me. That change is overdue. Motion to adopt. Resolution R 2024-07, a board member said. Second, another replied. All in favor, hands went up like the lake's small waves. Even hands I'd never seen at meetings. The guitar string hummed once in sympathy. Karen didn't move. Opposed? Marla asked. A stillness where a hand could have risen stayed empty. Carried, she said, gentler this time. She set the resolution down and picked up a shorter page. We also have a statement from the interim board. Read it, the nurse said. Marla read. We apologize to our neighbors for the tone and tactics used in recent years. We will focus on safety and stewardship, not surveillance. A neighbor in a Broncos cap called, "That's better than a flag ticket." Laughter came in polite pockets. Harris leaned toward me. "Prop," he whispered. I lifted the clipboard-mended hinge bright in the last light and held it chest high. It caught the sun and threw it back to the crowd. Someone clapped. Then more. The sound wasn't wild or vengeful. It was gratitude with a beat. Marla noticed and nodded. "Mr. Crane," she said into the mic, "thank you for insisting the record be the record." I shook my head. We all insisted, I said, not moving toward the mic. Jim raised a hand. Point of order, he said, grinning. Do we cheer now or after the corn? Now, Marla said. The cheer was small but honest. Karen's chair scraped. She stood halfway, then sat again as if a string had been tugged and let go. A few faces turned out of habit, then returned to the front. Power is loud when it arrives and quiet when it leaves. Harris stepped up to the side mic. One brief note, he said. Justice isn't loud. It's steady. Steady, several voices echoed the word, finding its home. Marla gestured to the clerk. He clicked on the small projector and a tidy slide appeared. Audit timeline request for proposals, next week's election in August, preliminary report by October, refund process in November. No promises of fireworks. Just boxes and arrows and dates you could circle on a calendar. Public comment, Marla said. The nurse lifted her hand. I work nights. I can scan minutes if someone will fetch boxes. I'll fetch the teenager, said, hair still lake-wet, a plate of corn in one hand and a pen in the other. The older gentleman cleared his throat. I'll help sort checks against the ledger. I still know my way around a column. Thank you, Marla said. We'll post sign-up sheets. Motion to adjourn to barbecue, someone called. Second came 3 voices. All in favor. Hands rose again this time with paper plates. As the board stepped back, Marla hesitated. One more thing, she said, glancing toward Karen without staring. We're better neighbors when we read before we act. She set down the gavel without using it. People fanned toward the tables. The smell of char and salt and butter thickened. I felt the weight of the clipboard and the lightness at the same time. Karen reached the aisle beside me closer than she'd been in months. She spoke without stopping. Enjoy your little parade. I kept my eyes on the lake. We'll enjoy our audit, I said. She didn't answer. The grass took her steps the way grass takes weather. Harris rejoined me with 2 paper cups. Not coffee, he said. Sweet tea. This is still Colorado, not court. I raised mine. To steady. To steady. Mr. Crane Marla had come down from the pavilion. She held out a folder with the crest stamped blue. Your copy. Inside the top page read, Resolution R 2024-07 in bold. The ink looked like it meant to stay. Keep it on the clipboard, Harris said. I slid the resolution under the clip. The hinge took it with a satisfying click. The seam didn't hide, it framed. Speech Jim said, materializing with a plate and a grin. I shook my head. No speeches. Then, one line, he insisted. I stepped to the edge of the pavilion where the lake could listen too. Thank you for reading with me, I said. Let's keep doing it. A simple answer earned a simple applause. The teenager whooped once, then remembered to hand his plate to the nurse. The guitar offered a soft chord, then another. Someone lit citronella. Children negotiated over the largest cob of corn with the seriousness of diplomats. The sky held on to the last thin ribbon of gold, and then gently let it go. I took a sip of tea and tasted mint someone had slipped in. The repaired clipboard under my arm felt like a promise kept not by one person but by paper and neighbors, and the odd mercy of a hinge that could be fixed. Peace tastes better earned, I said, not to anyone in particular. Max bumped my knee with his nose, then settled at my feet as if to say he'd known that all along. By the time the clerk stamped the last page, I could hear chairs ease and breath settle. The clipboard's mended hinge clicked shut over Resolution R 2024-07 minutes folded neat inside. We didn't chase drama. We posted records, reversed bogus fees, and let the law's ink outlive tempers. Harris's line stays with me, justice isn't loud. It's steady, and steady was enough to mend both ledger and trust. Anyone who's faced a notice taped too hard to their door knows the weight of paper. Have you seen your own neighborhood bend the rules back into shape?